Hi, my name's Reggie Thompson, and I'm joined here today by my colleague Scott Stewart, and we will be discussing the future state of Mexican cartels over the coming year. So, Scott, one of the trends that we've been tracking here in our coverage of Mexico cartels is the balkanization trend, in which cartels split apart into smaller groups under pressure by other cartels or by the armed forces. How do we expect this trend to be playing out over this year?
We really expect it to continue, Reggie, and especially the hardest hit groups have really been the Tamaulipas-based organized crime groups and of course, those in Sinaloa. Last year, we were a little bit off on our forecast in where we mentioned that we didn't think any cartel would be immune to balkanization. But surprisingly, the CJNG, the Cartel de Jalisco Nueva Generación, really bucked that trend. We didn't see any signs of them breaking down last year, despite some big takedowns among their cadre and even some of their kind of the backers in the Valencia family. So it was they were more resilient than we thought. Now, there could be some fissures there that we're not seeing and tensions developing, but at least at this point, it hasn't impacted them. But I believe that overall, in the long term, we are going to see them succumb to the same kind of pattern, and probably with the cartel fracturing first along geographic lines. It wouldn't be surprising to maybe see a splinter between the Veracruz factions and those in the Tierra Caliente region as it is.
So also one of the factors that we had to adjust in this year's forecast relative to last year's forecast was about the rise in violence in Mexico, just the rise in overall criminal violence. To what factors on the ground would you attribute this rise in violence?
Yeah, that's also one of the things that we blew last year, frankly. We expected to see the murder rates pretty much continue to decline or to remain roughly even for what we had seen in 2015. But really, this balkanization led to a lot more friction and friction points in different parts of Mexico than we had anticipated. Kind of our rationale in making that assessment was thinking that we weren't seeing the large national cartel wars, like the big advances when we saw Sinaloa try to take over Nuevo Laredo or Juarez or Tijuana. But we didn't need that kind of a large national war because there were so many small friction points between, whether it was the Gulf cartel factions and gangs, the Zetas fighting each other very bloodily up in, Tamaulipas, Nuevo Leon. So there's all these little frictions where we're creating a lot of body count. The good news is, for our viewers, is that most of the violence remains cartel on cartel. And the cartel versus civilian violence isn't at that same level.
Also, are we expecting a major change in the coming year in the way the Mexican government approaches organized crime, or are we just going to see kind of more of the same, so to speak, the same way that the Peña Nieto administration has been handling organized crime for the past several years?
Well, that's a good question and something that I'll throw back at you in a little bit. But I think that the Peña Nieto administration is probably going to continue to try, but I don't think they're going to have much success just because of the point that they're at in the administration. He's only got 2 years left. He only has one term, and he's really seen as a lame duck at this point. What do you think going forward as far as the possibility of the next administration either continuing on with the policies or the initiatives that Peña Nieto has put forth? Do you think we'll see that continue, or is it going to change?
Yeah, so overall, it seems from a political angle that the strategy that Mexico will follow will be more or less the same. Mexico obviously has an imperative to keep violence as low as possible, politically speaking, because it benefits their domestic constituency, but also because it's something the United States has been historically concerned about. However, we are going to see a new government come into place in Mexico in 2018, and really how that government approaches security, and more importantly, how it approaches security cooperation with the United States, largely depends on how we'll see Mexico-U.S. relations at that moment. It's pretty clear right now that under the new president's administration in the United States, there's going to be a renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, which could be kind of complicated over the next few months and years. And security, although, that's not going to be the first aspect that's really going to come into the negotiations, security cooperation may eventually come in as a pressure tactic from the Mexican side. So this is definitely something to consider going forward, seeing how both countries cooperate on this subject, because things like intelligence sharing and cooperation between agencies on both sides of the border could suffer if political relations deteriorate.
And certainly we saw a little bit and it's not just something that's new to the Trump administration. We saw it happen when Peña Nieto came into office, where he wanted to renegotiate the way that intelligence was shared and the way that U.S. and Mexican agencies interacted and who kind of controlled that on the Mexican side. So it's not unusual to see that kind of adjustment during a change of administration.
Exactly. Well, there's a lot we'll be looking at in Mexico, both in the political relationship with the United States and also in the domestic security scene over the coming year. For more on Mexican cartel coverage and on general political coverage of Mexico, please visit Stratfor.com and Stratfor's Threat Lens.